Some of this is overlap from before.
No, take your time.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
The House, and so this is when I was up at covering you in Lamar's at the healthcare. The Democratic-led House voted to condemn President Trump's, the Congresswomen of color to go back to the countries of origin. What do you think about that measure? Only 4 Republicans voted for it.
Well, look, my guess is, I haven't spoken to Speaker Pelosi, but my guess is she wanted to send a message to the world that Trump does not represent who we are in matters relating to race or ethnicity. And I am disappointed that only 4 Republicans voted for it. We're just better than this as a country. I mean, this is, I don't recall my career, I don't recall any president ever doing anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Referring to a congressperson based on their ethnicity and go back home, what, to Minnesota or to, the Bronx? I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
It's just...
Why do you think Republicans, only 4 voted for that? Why do you think more did not?
I hope it's not because they believe he's right. I hope it's because they are, which is not a good thing, but because they feel intimidated by him.
Okay.
But I don't know,
Okay.
to be honest.
And there's a lot of, some people want to debate whether the proper language is that it's racially tinged or that it's racist. What do you think that tweet actually was?
I just think it was morally reprehensible what he said and did.
Okay.
And I just don't think it reflects who we are. I mean, when's the last time? It's like, I can't imagine you being in a debate with another reporter and say, if they're a person of color, why don't you go back to wherever? I mean, it's not who we are, it's just inappropriate.
Thank you. So this storm blew up the other day because it was a tweet by President Trump. And I wanted to ask you how you might use Twitter if you
I
become
won't.
okay. So you like a personal account for like lay out policies to like shape public opinion, what have you.
If in fact Twitter is used to be used to for policy purposes like it was in our administration, we didn't use it for attacking people or for political purposes, or and I don't know. It's just so out of hand.
Okay. There's no alert for you of hey, it's a way to reach people, and it might be.
Well, it is a way to reach people, but it's gotten so murky, it's a way that. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to go to the topic. I look back to when I first interviewed you in 2007 when you were running for president. You came in for the editorial board, and I covered you a few times during that election cycle. And you were talking about the needs for federal health care reform.
Yeah.
And you were vice president, obviously, when the Affordable Care Act was enacted in 2010. And I know you talked a little bit about this in Lamar's, but what would be the one piece, as you talk about tweaking, not repealing, and keeping it intact, what would be what's the most prominent piece that needs to be tweaked?
The most prominent piece is to expand it to include a Medicare-like option for anybody who's dissatisfied with their employer-based insurance, their private insurance, or any insurance that they possess by whatever means. And also, it should be noted that people who are eligible for Medicaid, if they chose, they would automatically be enrolled in the Medicare provision of the Biden health care plan, and without any cost to them. It's the best, most thorough way, I believe, to get significant coverage.
Okay. Short one. What's your favorite national park in America?
Two.
Two.
One, it got voted last year one of the best national park in the country, Cape Henlopen National Park in Delaware.
Okay.
It's about 5,000 acres, and one of my proudest thing that I ever did was to as a young senator, get it back from the military who had used it necessarily for worrying about U-boats coming and taking out commercial shipping. And so they had sonar going out in the ocean off of the coast of Delaware and the Delaware River and the Delaware Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And they built gun towers there as well. There's these monuments, and I was able to get it back when the military didn't want to give it back and no longer needed it for those purposes. It was used mostly for recreational purposes, and people weren't able. Second, I think my second favorite park is probably Yellowstone.
Okay.
I've had my children, when I was vice president, I went to one of the national parks every year. I went down the rivers, went down the Snake, the Colorado, a number of rivers. But I think Yellowstone has the greatest variety, although it's a close call with Grand Canyon. Mm. It's like a cathedral. You've been to Grand Canyon National Park?
3 years ago. 3 years ago.
It's like a cathedral, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You stand there and it's like, my God, it's just incredible.
Pictures can't do justice.
Oh, they can't till you stand there and look at it. So, but I think one of the great things we owe Teddy Roosevelt and the Republican Party is our national park system. I think they're the greatest treasure we have.
Okay. Do you have any beefs or any complaints about how the national park system and just environment in general is being handled by the Trump presidency?
Yeah, it's not being funded.
Okay.
We should have in my view, there should be no drilling or lumbering on those parks. I think it's, and I think that Barack was correct to increase the number of national monuments that we have in the parks so they preserve it.
Okay. And I know at Lamar's you did mention that you rejoined the treaty.
The Paris Climate Accord.
Maybe speak a little bit about how prominent addressing global
it
warming
is the single greatest existential threat to humanity, and it's real. Not only has the UN said, now we only have 11 years before it's irreversible, but it is, it's going to change. Well, let me put it another way. When Barack and I were elected president and vice president, the first trip we took, I believe it was the first, was over to what they call the tank at the Pentagon, where the Joint Chiefs meet, and it's a very secure position. And they laid out for us, they thought the greatest threat to national security and international peace was climate change.
Okay.
And here's what they talked about. And I can give you an example of Darfur and the wars that took place in Darfur. It was all about the change in climate below the Sahara. And it was a war over, everybody thought it was Arab and African natives in the country, but it was about land, arable land. And so what they talked about is, if in fact the sea levels continue to rise, we're going to be in a position where you're going to have millions of people migrating. Millions of people migrating. For example, Indonesia is one of the largest populations in the country. It's all about a couple feet above sea level. They're already talking about having to move the capital because it's sinking. Now, they're saying they got to move it in 5 years. Well, not sink in 5 years. But my point is, think of what happens. Where do those people go? Where do the people go who are migrating from, particularly all these poor countries, when the sea levels rise? And you saw what happened just with the migration from the refugee flows from Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, can you imagine? Mm-hmm. It is an existential threat physically to the planet, but also in terms of our immediate national security.
One last one. Very, very short. Very short. Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper, White Album.
Abbey Road.
Abbey Road. I like that answer.